So not to date the podcast or give away personal details about anyone, but we might be in for a slightly longer episode this time.
And if you live in Queensland or New South Wales, you'll probably be able to guess why.
We won't say anything further, but if this goes over the 25-minute mark, which I think these have been going, yeah, that's why.
Yeah, this is episode 3, and well, we had a rather amusing encounter with a winter wolf.
Yeah. So I guess this is sort of post 2 separate recordings. So I think 40.
Spoiler alert: we don't always record
a single episode.
A single episode a week. Sometimes we'll do double episodes, and sometimes we won't record an episode.
I've actually been talking to a couple people that do their content, and it's really interesting to see the way people schedule that. Some people schedule just when they can. They'll just do like a run of like 5 or 6 episodes.
Yeah.
And then that'll be it for like a month or something like that. We regularly record, and sometimes we get a bit ahead with double recordings and single recordings. So
I like the steady pace. Having like a rhythm to it helps keep because like if you get too far away from the previous recording, it can be hard to get back into the what were we thinking about just at the end of that last game.
The groove of it, yeah. It's definitely so that's the way we sort of decided to do our cadence of recording, but we'll see if that comes to bite us in the ass. And so far we've got it helps us keep ahead. So
but yeah.
So you want it? So yeah, the winter wolf. So this one I can't. So this will be 46, will it, or 47?
I honestly can never tell unless I'm actively looking at the numbers.
I'll need to go check my thing. I think it's around 46, 47. So there is, and we'll just for future editing purposes, it can't come out until that episode comes out. Winter wolf. Yeah. Is this something you wanted to ask, or?
Well, I was just actually a bit curious about the awakened wolves more so than the winter wolf itself. So, awakening is a fun spell, and I like that it's actually one of the more complicated spells in 5th edition.
Yeah, it definitely feels more of a DM usage spell than a player one.
So, it was a pretty common tactic in other I guess mostly 3rd edition, but also in Pathfinder, for druids and rangers to awaken their animal companions, allow them to understand instructions given by their other party members.
Okay, so you used to do it so that the creature was sort of more intelligent and could interact with other party members rather than just yourself.
Also, mounts. There is a big advantage to having an intelligent mount.
Yep. I feel that always gets a bit like, with a DM, it sort of goes as far as the DM's willing to take it as well.
Yeah, well, like, ideally, there should also be, like, a little bit of give and take with it, because by awakening an animal, it's already sentient, but you're giving it sapience. You suddenly have to treat it like a friend and not like a pet.
Yeah, sure. What's interesting is, so I guess dropped the clues really early on, because they were using tactics to actually get at you.
Yeah.
And they were being smart about the whole encounter.
They were doing the rogue tactic of the first rogue moves up and holds their action.
Yeah, when I said that, I think I got an incredulous look across the room. It's like, they know how to do that?
Yeah, that's something that I've done many a time as a rogue in 5th edition to get my sneak attacks off. Rogue probably being the class I played the most in 5th edition, which is kind of amusing. I consider myself more of a primary spellcaster. But I guess the character that I've had a long-running campaign where I've been playing an arcane trickster, and just because so much time has gone into it, I just I keep going back and playing it. We're like, we're 13th level now.
Okay.
So I just got access to the 3rd level of wizard spells for the arcane trickster, which is fun because I don't get haste yet. Because it has to be an enchantment or an illusion spell until I get to
so you can't pick up fireball and stuff like that. Which would kind of be a waste for a rogue anyway. At that level, there's better spells.
Well, like the big ones at 3rd level, are things like Hypnotic Pattern,
Yeah.
particularly as an arcane trickster, because they have the magical ambush. So anybody, if you're hidden from your target, they get disadvantage on their saving throws against you.
Okay, I see.
So, like crowd control spells, I've been making a lot of use out of Hold Person and Suggestion from Stealth.
Man, actually, you tried Suggestion on the Winter Wolf.
That's a fun one, because the Winter Wolf, unlike Awakened Wolves, shares a language with us.
Yeah, when you said that, I was like, oh crap, is this going to just completely gut the encounter? But he did make his save, and I think barely. I think he rolled exactly.
He met my DC.
When I rolled it too, I'm like, that's not a good roll. Like, with player DCs, like at the start, like around, first 5 levels or so, they can really range from like 12 to 16, depending on if like players put all their points into their primary spellcasting stat. So I was like really worried. I think I rolled, I don't know what your can't remember what your DC was, either 13 or 14.
It's a 13.
13. I rolled a 13, I'm like, I think that's going to just fail.
But yeah, it just, that would have been, that, because like my instruction, and I love Suggestion, one of my favorite spells, and again, in 5th edition, they didn't actually change it all that much. As long as it's like reasonable, as long as it's not going to be like put the person into a life-threatening situation. And one of my classic favorite suggestions is run away from us, because it's almost always a reasonable option, and it's not gonna, like, I'm not directing them into a path of danger, so assuming they fail the will save, they're almost always going to go for it.
Is there a minimum, like, intelligence they need to have?
They need to be able to understand you.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not based on their intelligence, it's based on whether or not they can understand your language.
Yeah, I was really surprised, because I was looking at the stat block, and I'm like, I don't know, these guys understand Common, Winter Wolf, and third language, Giant, I think it was. So I was really surprised when I was like, oh wait, they will understand you.
Suggestion is a very fun spell, and bang for your buck at a 2nd level spell. It's very good because it has utility as for both combat. You can essentially turn it into a disable for the entire duration, and it lasts 8 hours.
Yeah.
So run as far away from us as you can turns into someone spending the entire day trying to get away from you.
Yeah. Which if you're a wolf, it's going to be pretty strong. Yeah, I'd have to have to deal with that. I'm sort of glad that I made the save though, because like
the combat is
well, it's not that I'm like, oh, you have to complete this combat of this encounter. Like if you find a way out of the encounter that's not what I'm trying to do, that's fine. It just sort of like, it sort of does adjust your prep that you had been doing. I think going into the second set, I would have had to have probably paused this for a bit just to do a couple of quick prep steps.
Yeah, it also name dropped us, so we don't have a conversation talking point.
Yeah.
We have a conversation talking point now because, it fought to the death.
Yeah, true. There was a couple of things I revealed with it. But yeah, so, I mean, if it had to run away, I generally have enough stuff prepped, but I probably would have had to pause this a little bit. And you'll get DMs that have to do that every so often, because they're like, I have to quickly check something.
Luckily for the audience, we can just edit all that out.
Yes. Lifting the veil. We don't just have absolutely everything on tape make it to the final.
I mean, the cuts sound pretty good. It can be very difficult to tell when we are, There are a couple. Just
lifting it from the editor's bay, there are a couple really awkward spots I've had to mesh together.
This isn't you don't get points for guessing which ones are the difficult ones either.
Please don't, it'll hurt my feelings.
We don't make it easy for Callan sometimes as well.
Oh, often not, no.
Where was I going with this?
I don't know, you started on wolves.
I kind of been around. I mean, I had it was a good session overall. We turned what I imagine would normally be a combat encounter. I imagine there's normally a way to get through the kobolds with diplomacy, even without having a kobold present.
Yeah, I mean, without giving away too much. The whole thing is designed to be able to not just fight it, but you basically made things really easy for me because, you sent the kobold first, which again, you get information going in, right? So if you use smart, freaking hell, this will not be able to be edited out. If you make smart use of the information you've got, there we go. You can really help you out. And you had a kobold in the party, so it wouldn't make sense that they would instantly attack you. So it gave you enough breathing room. I mean, normally you might have to try and subdue one, or capture, or non-lethally kill, or convince during combat. But yeah.
Man, that's a brutal trap they had though. Just soaring the bridge out from under you into a fucking into the deepest pit you ever did see.
Yeah, it didn't come up on. This is a now true DM behind the shield. If you want to run the Rime of the Frost Maiden campaign for your friends. I mean, you probably wouldn't be listening to our other content anyway if you didn't want spoilers. But there is a point in that place that if you fall, the character's dead, unless you've got like
slow
fall or flying or something like that. And even if you've got slow fall, you're basically trapped in a 2,000, 3,000 foot pit.
I imagine with slow fall that might give you the chance for your friends to throw you a rope.
Maybe, but yeah, that's the thing. Like it certainly could put a character out of commission. And considering when this part of the adventure is supposed to take place, without going too far, usually you might hit this at an earlier level. That's a really brutal place to have a character suddenly die.
Yeah. I was actually strongly considering Slowfall. Because I do really, again, it's very...
it's good utility.
It's good utility. It'll save a life.
Yeah. Because you can cast it on companions too.
Yeah, it's like you and 5 other people.
Yeah.
And it's a reaction as well.
It's Featherfall. We keep saying Slowfall.
Yeah.
Featherfall is the actual spell. It's because you can have other things that give you Slowfall. Which
like monks.
Yeah. Famously. So like Featherfall is a clutch spell, but it feels weird because it's a spell that you almost always should have as a caster that can take it, because it will save a life in the situation. But it is literally only useful in that one situation.
So the reason I didn't go with it is a bit of a meta call, right? Because I looked at Icewind Dale and I'm just like, realistically, what is the verticality that we're going to be dealing with in the Dale?
Apparently 3,000 feet.
Yeah, apparently a pit that goes all the way down to the fucking Underdark.
Hey, name drop the title of the episode. That actually does lead to the Underdark, so you can base adventures going. I mean, they do. I found this in nearly every single module I think I've ever run, is there's always one link to the Underdark somewhere. And it's like, it's not like the module has anything for you to be like, oh, if you go to the Underdark, do this. It feels like it's like, if you go to the Underdark, switch modules to Out of the Abyss, and you're golden, right?
Well, the Underdark is it's a Faerun original.
Yeah.
It essentially didn't exist until R.A. Salvatore came along and wrote up a bunch of books about the Drow. Yeah, but that's a lot of Faerun. It was a role-playing setting between a bunch of people who are now, famous fantasy authors. And, other authors got in and they added their own bits to it. Like, the first, so R.A. Salvatore being the one that I'm the most familiar with, and the viewer at home might recognize the name Drizzt Do'Urden, even if only through cultural osmosis. The Drow.
Yeah, true. And I think a lot of inspiration for some of those novels with Drizzt comes into the Icewind Dale stuff, right?
It sure does. So Drizzt, the first book is set in the Dale, in the Ten Towns. It's set like hundreds of years before our current game, but there are definitely. I'm already noticing some one specific nod to it.
There's several. It says so in the actual module. Like, this is a nod to these books that people might be familiar with.
Yeah. So the Shardolin is the most obvious link to the book thus far.
There's another one, but again, with the way this module is structured, you may not run into it. To be honest.
The Clan Battlehammer is the other big one. One of Drizzt's oldest friends is Brunor Battlehammer. He's I forget his title. I think he's the king of Clan Battlehammer. But they since moved back to their ancestral home in the spine of the world, which is based around an enormous silver mine. I believe there's also a tribe of nomadic barbarians.
I don't want to spoil things, but no, you haven't run into any of those.
Yep. But I
There's actually, and look, I think we've mentioned it, and I've mentioned it in these, like maybe a previous episode. There is so much to this book, like this module, and it is not intended as an exploration of the Dale. I mean, you could play it that way pretty easily, but if you take it as is, this is a fairly replayable module, and there's so much to it.
Kind of like Strahd that way.
It is a little. It does feel a little bit Strahd inspired in a way, and Strahd's. But like I'm even noticing the difference because I played a Strahd game, and the intent for Strahd, from what I can see, is you get some randomization into it about the things that are important to you, and you're supposed to go find clues that lead you to where those things are, right?
Yeah.
But like the idea is that it'll be like, okay, these are the specific spots you got to go. Once you get the like go find this because it's like your key to defeating Strahd, you're basically just looking for clues to where you need to go, and it sort of then not railroads you, but it very heavily directs you where you need to go. This module is the only real randomness. Is like randomize the town that the players start. Cool. Now go.
Yeah.
Explore. Like do what you want to do.
The Strahd. This is maybe a bit of a deep pull, but the Curse of Strahd has a very like Crackdown-esque kind of feel, where it's like you can in theory assail Castle Strahd whenever you want.
You know what that kind of reminds me of?
Mm-hmm.
Like those people that play Legend of Zelda, skipping all the dungeons.
Yeah, they just speed run right to Castle Hyrule.
You can do that in like Breath of the Wild, right? So it's just busting in on Ganon like 100 hours before you're supposed to.
Unfortunately, D&D doesn't have that kind of level of skill expression where you could topple Strahd at a first level.
1, yeah. It would have to take an immense amount of bad luck on Strahd's part not to kill a party immediately.
Yeah. That rogue character I was talking about, another kobold, but it was really funny being a kobold rogue specifically in Strahd, because guess where there's never any sun.
Yes. This is what I was also like a little bit annoyed, like a bane of my existence when you were like, I'm going to do a kobold in Icewind Dale. I'm like, in Icewind Dale, when the sun never really rises.
We do have the option of swapping me over to the new kobold.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way, it depends how much you abuse what you've got, I guess, more than anything else.
If I was a more martial class, there'd definitely be a bit more room for abuse, but at the moment, I'm swinging my rapier less and less as I acquire spell slots, and my damage is probably not going to get any higher with my rapier than it is right now.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'll have to make that judgment call, but it's like one of those things, like Strahd's the same, I think, and also, it's also very similar to if you ever play Dungeon of the Mad Mage, because you're underground for, like, the entire adventure. It's like, you can really abuse, like, being a drow, or a Smurfleblum, or anything like that. Is it Smurfleblum? Sniffleblum. Talking about, like, just a slight tangent, which is sort of this entire purpose of this episode.
Reflex Save, slight tangents.
Jen and I were talking recently about like some of the names. Okay, we can't go where we normally go. I think I know how to get around it, but we might be going a bit long. So we were talking about things that people pronounce, right? In like D&D in particular, like different names for things. I think we were talking about it, how like some things until you hear them said are like, I can't remember the example like we were stuck on, but the one that came up for me was an artificer. Like we say artificer, right? Like I do.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like artificer or whatever it is. That sounds stupid and lame to me.
That does sound stupid and lame.
Artificer. But no, so I feel like artificer is the Australian way of saying that word.
So this might be like, again, because Australian, but I learned how to say that word playing Magic the Gathering, not Dungeons and Dragons, because it's a creature type.
Yeah.
And not just a creature type, it's also like an important title in a lot of the supplementary material for the early stories of Magic the Gathering, because the Brothers' War was, primarily a contest between two artificers trying to one-up each other in a continent-spanning war where they were using progressively larger weapons of mass destruction against each other.
It's interesting because Magic is still the same company, right?
Well, I don't know if we touched on this in a Reflex Save After Dark, but Wizards of the Coast started as the Magic the Gathering company, and then in the early 2000s they acquired D&D off of the collapsing TSR.
Yeah, that's right. And then that's why, and I was saying that's why you get so much crossover now. So I don't know. Maybe yell at me on Twitter, I suppose, that I'm wrong, but Artificer to me sounds more natural.
Artificer sounds cooler as well.
I can't remember what word it was that we were stuck on. It was another one that was like, that's a weird way to say it.
I had a bit of a laugh at her expense, but when a friend of mine played D&D for the first time, she called her weapon of choice a scimitar.
That's a good one. And not even laughing at someone.
It was a funny pronunciation. I didn't want to actually insult her, and I'm glad I didn't, because she still plays to this day.
Yeah.
But it's
and
just,
if you've seen a word written and never said it.
Yeah, it is absolutely one of those words that you've probably never heard said out loud unless you are a nut about historic weapons, or unless you play Dungeons and Dragons.
All right, so to make Zimma's friend that probably is not going to listen to this feel better, when I was early teens, I think I had seen the word and never heard it said, and it was fatigue. So when I said it out loud for the first time, I think I said fatigue.
I feel like I did the same thing once upon a time.
That's a weird one to say.
English is a funny language. I have actually recently come to appreciate English a little bit more, though, because, oh man, French sucks.
Sorry, French viewers, but you trying to alienate an entire country from our podcast?
Multiple countries.
Oh,
it is a difficult language. Not just even for people who are native speakers, it can be a pain in the butt.
Well, while people are yelling at me for Artificer, get on Twitter and yell at Zimmer about French people, I think.
Yell at me about my bad French takes.
Yeah.
All you Quebecois speakers. Specifically you.
He's talking about you.
Again, this is a massive tangent.
Yeah. So I don't know what we were talking about originally, but we've got a bit more time now that we are stuck in traffic.
This is the reason why I'm going on the tangents, is because I can see that we're going to be here a while. But do you know the movie Airplane?
Yeah.
So I rewatched the movie Airplane a couple of years ago, in 2020 during the pandemic. But I was watching it in a Discord call with a native French speaker and a native German speaker.
Right.
And so we had a couple of moments through the movie where they're like, wait, let's go back and rewatch that scene in your native language, right?
Right.
And specifically the main ones were the bits where they're like, don't worry, I speak jive.
Okay, yeah.
So when we get to the German part of that, and I feel like this is just the people who are dubbing these movies are absolutely throwing shade.
Right.
But when we get to the German version of that, the black guys are speaking with Bavarian accents.
All right. Yeah. I was going to say it's interesting to see what other languages have as regional accent representation.
Yeah.
What is the French one then?
They're speaking Quebec French.
Oh, so is it French Canadian is what they're speaking?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fairly clever.
I thought that was really funny.
Oh man. Okay, let's take that translation for a second. What would you say is for an Australian accent would be?
Oh man, that's
jive.
That is rough, because we get
we have only a few different accent differences.
Yeah.
I don't know what you would I don't think there's a good translation for that into Australian accents.
There's not a lot of very densely populated parts of Australia, and the accent doesn't change a lot. We have like the Bogan accent, right?
It's not right.
And
though.
yeah, and there's also kind of like that that like Bushman sort of Crocodile Dundee sort of talk.
It's sort
But
of like
it's not the same. This is like the jive that they're making fun of is like a
which is
very
sort
like
of inner city. I can't think of like inner city Melbourne or inner city Sydney being a good fit for that either. Necessarily.
Yeah. Well, we don't have a lot of like those like densely packed suburbs even in our cities.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I guess it just doesn't translate well to Australian English.
Like it would absolutely translate well for like England, because you can like
can
travel like, you know, like 4 hours and suddenly everybody's talking different in the United Kingdom.
You do that here and it's just down the road. Oh yeah.
We live in a big, sparsely populated country.
That's true. It's true. Oh god. Okay, I don't know where we're at with this episode. It's sort of gone a little bit off the rails. But
we're allowed to. This is probably going to be a bit of a longer one, just because of the thing.
I see people walking around everywhere. And it must be over.
It has to be over. It's either over or it's functionally over at this point.
Okay. The question you have to ask is who's happy.
That's a good question.
I don't know. I would ask you to look it up, and then like you'll give away what it is.
Yeah, I'm not going to bother. I'll look it up after the recording.
I've got to go to the office before I go home, so I'll probably do that there. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any other questions? Because we talked a bit about the Winterwolf stuff, which was the first recording. What about? Do you have anything about the second one? Well, you did talk a little bit about.
Yeah. What is up with that fossil, the Mind Flayer skull?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's hard to really get here's the other thing as well. It's like there's so much in modules that there's like no way to tell the players without just outright telling them, like just meta knowledge that they'll never know. Because it's not like you'll find out about this if you go here, or you'll do this if you go here. So what it implies in the text of and I was trying to get it across, is like that is like a fossilized that's like a fossilized skull of a Mind Flayer whose brain is turned into a psi crystal.
Yeah, well,
through the fossilization process, which I think I got across.
Yeah,
but like I guess the implication was that because psi crystals are made where Mind Flayers spent time, I guess the implication is because it was close to the Underdark, at some point a Mind Flayer was living in this area and got buried or trapped a very, very long time ago.
Yeah, it was just like I appreciate the finding of the key item we need for our side quest.
It helps that you had a MacGuffin detector.
Yeah.
Which is in the book. I didn't make that up. That is intended for you to have.
It is.
What I find kind of funny is that the whole thing about you guys finding out about the gem mine was an offhand rumor you guys found out earlier in the adventure. If I hadn't dropped that rumor about it, oh my god!
Whoa! I think that might be the first time we've had one of those on the podcast.
Jesus. All right, people are being stupid. That wasn't Elaine, but anyway. Where was I? My brain is gone.
Yeah, no, we're talking about the fossil.
Yeah, so the funny thing was, like, you guys found out about the rumor. I'm not sure, without directly telling you where you needed to go, if you would have found what you needed to find the psi crystal.
Maybe like a history check or something, or maybe. Actually, I think probably what we would have done is we would have just headed into town and been like, where can we find gems? I mean, it probably would have cost us a bit of extra time.
Yeah.
Because we would have had to like wake up, and then rather than leaving like first thing in the morning, we would have had to been like, all right, and now let's talk to people until someone can be like, yeah, there's a gem mine up. Is there any other? Is this like the only psi crystal in the Dale? Or?
Yeah, pretty much.
Damn.
Like, it doesn't, without going too far into it, like, this is the place where you're supposed to get the psi crystal if you decide to help the Mind Flayers out. And like that's it. Like, and I don't mind telling you because like you've completed this part of the thing, but yeah, you would have needed to, I guess, do some research, and it's not very clear in the text where you can do that. So I would have been doing a lot of improv.
That's the normal the DM's job.
But of course, I can make it seem like clever foreshadowing that you discovered about the mine earlier in the adventure.
But only if you don't listen to this side podcast.
Yeah, you only know how much I'm teetering on the brink if you listen to Underdark.
No, we were pretty close to the brink of the Underdark. That's for God.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah, no, oh man, and this would have been really weird, like finding the mine, and finding like this illithid skull and the crystal before getting the quest. You're just like, what the fuck?
Crystal doesn't have any value innately, so I think if you find it, you would not have been getting rid of it. So if you then find the illithids later, you have the psi crystal. Job done, right? The funny thing is, like, it's technically similar to like the pistol in that it's like counted kind of as a magic item. So there's that for what it's worth.
I'm still kind of taken aback that they have this full-on like Mothership Zeta fucking DLC in this goddamn fantasy quest.
They definitely are tapping again. Like as I said, I love a lot of the themes in this module. Like they really hammer into some of the themes that I really enjoy reading about. And just one of them is just like, hey, let's just because like this happens, and this is a story trope that happens a lot in, say, rural, snowy areas, just aliens. Aliens can, like fire in the sky style thing, right?
I really appreciate that, as far as Carnelian was concerned, he'd been, like, kidnapped, but there was, like, a whole bunch of gaps in his memory, rather than Callan outright saying Carnelian had been kidnapped by aliens. Because I would have been able to take that way less seriously.
Yeah, look, you know me a little bit. I sort of wanted to be a bit more dry. I don't want it to be jokes all the time. Like, we have fun and we have jokes, but I wanted you to take it seriously. I was playing it straight. So, and I think I very cleverly dropped the alien hint without actually having to say aliens until the very end.
You didn't have to say aliens until you showed us the pictures of the aliens. Of
the mind flayers. And after that, it's kind of unavoidable, but I just like that you can do that kind of stuff with this module. You know what it kind of reminds me of?
Yeah?
Original Fallout 1 and 2, where you can just run into random crap in the middle of the...
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and like more so Fallout 1 and 2, like not played as much for comedy because Fallout 1 and 2 did have a lot of that more comedic bent, but just the fact that this kind of stuff is out there in the Dale is so weird and fun. Great setting for future people, even if you don't run this module, but I don't know what else to say about that.
Snowy areas are quite fun for, and this was part of the reason why I put my vote towards Icewind Dale, because we did have a list of what we were initially looking to run when we first started this project.
What were we looking at? We were looking at
Storm, the one with the giants.
Yeah, so Storm King's Thunder, I think it was.
Yep. And
Icewind Dale. I think Princes of the Apocalypse might have been one we were looking at.
Which one's Princes of the Apocalypse?
The Temple of Elemental Evil.
Oh, yeah. Were we also looking at the Into the Abyss?
I think we were, yeah.
But a bunch of you were already playing Mad Mage, so you were kind of sick of...
just being underground all the time, yeah. And I'm actually, again, I'm very glad that we ended up in Icewind Dale, because I feel like, compared to some modules, can be very dungeon crawl heavy. And I feel like anything underground is going to sort of be that way. We've managed to kind of avoid that in this session, where we have some bits of dungeon crawl, some bits of fighting that way, but it's very open to me, and I kind of like where it's sort of been going.
No, yeah, but also Icewind Dale is very alien for a fantasy setting.
Yeah, I mean you normally, and also when you would normally go in this kind of setting, you'd expect it to all be Nordic, but it's got bits of Nordic, bits of Celtic, little bits of just Eastern Europe, there's lots of that kind of thing, a bit of Native American, in the Americas as well. Yeah. They've sort of taken just about every snow setting you can have and sort of combined it in a way.
Well, it's
bits and pieces.
It kind of makes sense as well, because it is all, like, old frontier towns and mining towns, and, like, these are a whole bunch of different cultures that set up, like, hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Like, I think Goodmead was settled by people from, did I say Schult initially? One of them was definitely Schult, and then one of them was from Callan as well.
Yeah.
I think that was actually more recent. That was either Targos or Tourmaline was like Callan, and then I think Goodmead was settled by people from Schult, and then, people in East Haven, I think from Luskan. I've got it written down somewhere.
Yeah, I imagine it would be in the book.
It is in the book. So you can sort of like tell what the way they set up the 10 houses, so it wasn't sort of just a homogenous space, which it very easily could have been, you know?
And again, like a lot of this groundwork did come from fantasy books.
Yeah, for sure.
Even like the dwarves, I already mentioned the dwarves living here, but like that, like their position and their location in the 10 towns, and the fact that they're not like they live in and among the 10 towns, but most of them don't like live in like a separate area that is, like an 11th town almost.
Right. Yeah. There's actually a couple spots that are like they're not officially part of the 10 towns, but they're kind of a place unto themselves, which is sort of interesting.
Yeah.
Like the Dwarven Valley that that was one of the examples, but it's certainly not the only one I can think of.
Well, I can't think of any of the others immediately, so I won't ask you about them. It's a good module, people.
Yeah, highly recommend. Like, you probably have to play it as a DM right now, but it's also a fun module to run as a DM as well.
I mean, even if you are like a player and you want to try it out, chances are you're not going to do like half the same stuff as we are.
At
least for the first chunk.
Definitely for the first chunk, you can have a very different experience. But I definitely I always recommend this to people in general who play D&D, even if it's not something that you do long term or even ever again. Do some DMing, right? Like, it definitely helps you learn as a player the sort of different pressures that someone whose DM is under, and helps you sort of understand the game inside a little bit better, and it makes you more confident as a player as well.
If you want to get better at improv skills, DMing is one of the best ways to do that.
Yep.
Because you are never going to be able to plan for every decision that 4 human beings are going to be able to make.
And even if you have a module, they haven't written every single possibility in there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of like panic, behind the screen moments of like, what am I supposed to get these guys to do?
Just roll some dice and use that as a distraction to think about things.
Or just start role-playing a character really heavy and hope they get into the role-play for a while. That does happen. Skeen is one of my favorite NPCs, and we may see him again someday.
I'm sure Skeen's presence will be felt once more before our time in the Dale is done.
I'd be shocked if we don't see anything again.
Alright.
Well, a little bit longer than usual.
Thanks, traffic. Thanks, unnamed event.
Alrighty then. Well, get the fuck out of my car.
See you next week.